Like I was telling you, Sandra, I was in a bad place back then. But let me tell you, my life got turned around for good when a street preacher invited me to attend a religious meeting of a visiting evangelist who was in town one Friday night. And from that time on, I've never been the same. Yeah, I remember it as though it was yesterday. Where I was in my life then, Sandra, I didn't think God was there in all that crime and dysfunction. But that preacher said God was there too, and he seeks whoever he wants to help them out of that kind of environment. And believe me, Sandra, I needed help, and I wanted out of that bad situation.
Oh my, Aaron, no.
You said it, Sandra. Oh my is a good expression to use in responding to my situation. And you know what else? Over a little time and with some things happening to me, I did get out of that environment and ended up here. I'm not going to give you all the details, Sandra, but I will say that God certainly turned my life around, and he'll turn yours around too, if you let him.
That's amazing, Aaron. Amazing that your background is so similar to mine, like I said, even being in New York City. But you know, I have a godmother back home in Michigan who says some of the same things you're saying about God.
Well, I'd love to meet her at some point. But anyway, Sandra, let me say this. I've done a lot of growing since I've been in the faith. Now, I still have my ups and downs as a believer, but one thing I can tell you, no one can take God's Spirit out of you unless you give it away. And believe you me, there will be a lot of opportunities for you to give it away. But you just have to resist that temptation.
Aaron, I understand what you're saying, but as I was going to say, my godmother, whose name is Minzy, says some of the same things you do. I mean, she is really a godly woman. When I met her, I had come a long way from the time I described to you in my earlier life. Anyway, my problem now, Aaron, is seeing real examples of how God shows himself in a practical way. And I'll tell you, Aaron, I go to this church. Actually, it's the church where I work. And I hear the minister talk all this spiritual talk. But my experience is that many of the people who go there don't seem to practice what they hear being preached to them. But let me quickly say that what I'm talking about doesn't apply to my godmother, Minzy. I mean, she seemed so strong in her faith. Why, even the loss of her husband didn't faze her very much. She's about as real as you can get.
I understand, Sandra. I've experienced some of the same things on occasion. The feeling that some people are not as genuine in their faith as they should be. But the church also has people in it that are genuine, like your godmother. But you know, so much of our feelings come from our minds being messed up because of the negative environment we've been exposed to. Let me give you an example of something that happened to me long before I became a believer. And because of that experience, my attitude towards men was a lot different than it had been before.
Okay, Aaron, what is it?
All right, I'll tell you. But let me start by saying to you, Sandra, that one of the worst decisions I ever made was to drop out of high school. I did complete my GED, but I met my high school sweetheart before I finished, and soon after that we got married. Now, it was a nice relationship, and we loved each other. But he graduated and went off to trade school while I remained in Brooklyn. And by the way, he went to trade school over in Queens.
Wow, that was really a rocky start to your marriage, Aaron, being apart from each other like that.
Yes, it was, Sandra. Very rocky. And let me tell you, it was a lonesome time for me being 2 years separated from him. While he was away, I worked at a local restaurant as a waitress and was able to make ends meet. But I was so eager to see him again. when he got back. But when my husband got back, he seemed to be a different person from what he was when he left. It was good that he could get any type of job he wanted, working on cars, that is. And that's what he did. He quickly got a job at a mechanic shop. It was a nice job, good salary with benefits, but to make a long story short, I was at work one day when I decided to come home early.
I know I'm getting a little emotional now, Sandra, and I don't know if I can finish this story.
It's all right, Aaron. You don't have to continue. And here, take these tissues.
Thank you. But no, I have to get this off my chest. I'm so sorry to burden you with my problems.
No, you go ahead, Aaron. I'm not burdened by what you're saying at all.
Okay, honey. Well, thanks for your patience. Anyway, as I was saying, I came home that day, entered my house, and heard something strange going on in our bedroom. I walked in and oh, I'm so sorry, Sandra.
Here. Take some more tissue, Aaron.
Okay. Thank you again, Sandra. But when I entered the bedroom, there he was. I found my husband with someone else in our bed, Sandra. Our own bed. Do you hear me? I was shocked. I caught them in the very act, Sandra.
Oh my, Aaron. No.
Sandra gasps, not knowing exactly what to say with that information. She gave Aaron some tissue so that she could clean herself up. After a brief pause, Aaron continued with her amazing story.
Well, after seeing that, Sandra, I stormed out of that house with my baby. My husband was taking care of him at the time, or at least that was what he was supposed to have been doing. Anyway, I took my baby. Yes, I did. I took him with a box of diapers and all, and never looked back. And you know what, Sandra? I would do it again. And I didn't come back to that place. It was a very painful experience, Sandra. We officially separated a short time after that. We later contacted one another when he tried to explain what happened. He actually came to an apartment that I had rented later. The nerve of that guy.
Yeah, Aaron. The guy did have a lot of nerve coming around after you two had separated.
Yeah, a lot of nerve. But let me finish. We finally got the custody aspect of the situation concluded, and fortunately, I took the rights to our little boy except for a prearranged schedule of limited visits by his father. That happened years ago, Sandra, and Tony, that's my little boy's name, happens to be with his father this weekend. I still don't know how my boy survived all of that, but his father has him much of the time now. But Sandra, I never regretted what I did. After that experience, I took to the streets and got into all kinds of stuff that I should not have been involved in, like I said. Anyway, eventually, as I told you earlier, I met this street preacher, and he turned my life around with his message, or at least the message I heard from this street evangelist. I basically heard the gospel for the first time, that God still loved me and was concerned about my situation, despite my dysfunction, or at least the dysfunction that I was in at the time. Do you see, Sandra? We both have a lot in common.
We sure do, Aaron. But you know, right now we need to forget all the bad times we both have had and concentrate on this beautiful scenery out here. I mean, I never get a chance to go to the beach. There's nothing like this back in Detroit.
Well, Sandra, I do look forward to spending the weekend with you, and who knows where it might lead. But for now, just listen to those ocean waves.
We're now ready to address some questions relating to the audio visual that you just saw. And I'm not sure how good a job I did trying to be a female, especially with the emotions, but at any rate, hopefully you got the idea. And we're always, by the way, looking for people who can do that. But at any rate, we're going to have some questions, and so we'll see how you all feel about the audio visual. So let me go ahead and do that. These are the discussion questions, and hopefully everybody can hear. And we'll go ahead and talk about the audio visual that you've just seen. And we had, of course, in the first part, Alan, Kristen, along with Betty, Sherry, Pam, Panya, Yvonne, and Ms. Jones. Did I miss anybody? I didn't miss anybody. Okay. Well, this is the lead-in for question 1. Despite Sandra's health issues, her main issue being her desire to see Fred, who was the husband of her friend Maggie, which was not good, as I may have mentioned. Nonetheless, Sandra became very close to Maggie's mother, Mincy. And Mincy was a positive role model for Sandra. So the first question, how important is it to look to someone, another individual, to be a role model?
I would say it's
Go ahead.
very important to have someone to be a role model to look up to. And being a role model is very important too, knowing that people are looking at you and emulating what you do. It calls you to live your life much more carefully because you wouldn't want anybody to stumble.
Okay. Anyone else? I think that it's very important to have people, human beings that you can look to, maybe to get some positive feedback as to how to deal with certain situations, because it becomes more real. I think we all realize that, of course, we look to God and Jesus as our ultimate role model. But in this human existence, it's much more practical in many cases to have someone that we can touch and feel and get encouragement from. So I believe that's very, very important. Again, anyone else want to chime in on that? Or you may feel differently, which is fine.
Yeah, I feel basically the same, that it's very important, but I think there's another component of that that's pretty helpful, is that having a role model, by definition, is not yourself, and it helps to get out of yourself. I think a lot of times some of the stories that we talked about with Sandra and Aaron, those are very difficult things when you're having trouble in a relationship or having health difficulties, those kind of things. And it's really easy to just get too engrossed in what you're dealing with, whether it's good or bad, or if it's just really busy, whatever's going on. And having someone else to look to that's outside of that really helps you kind of mentally break out of being stuck where you are.
Okay, anyone else? Anyone else? Feel free. I was telling you all that I had a brother that recently passed last month, and he was older than I was, older than I am, but he was a role model for me for a number of years, especially coming up. And you kind of, at least I looked to him as being someone to emulate in some ways. But we're all human, and we all have flaws. And so even the best of us maybe should not look totally to anyone else to try to emulate totally, because everyone has a flaw here and there. And so, but in that sense, we only have God to emulate and Jesus to emulate. But at the same time, living in the real world, it's always good to have encouragement from other people that we can see and touch and feel, get encouragement from. That's very important. I'm going now to 1 Timothy, the 4th chapter and the 12th verse, and this is what it says. Let no one despise your youth, but be an example to the believers in word, in conduct, in love, in spirit, in faith, in purity. So what Timothy is saying here is that we should be an example for other people, maybe given the situation to be maybe a role model, or and we can, and this is one reason, as you mentioned, Alan, why we need to live in such a way where other people can look toward us as someone who they could follow. And this was the problem with Sandra, with the church that she attended and the church that she worked at. And she saw many of the people in her church as not being genuine. And unfortunately, this repels some people from the church. They see other people and all their flaws and all their not being quote unquote real people. And so this really keeps some people away from the church who are outside the church, and that's not good. So it's always good to have that human element. We all believe in God, and we know that God is the ultimate role model, but we do need that human touch.
I was going to say, Dr. Porter, it seems like all my life I've had a mentor or role models. When I grew up, there was 8 of us, and I was number 7 of 8. And my parents would constantly say to my sibling, you got to be an example for her. Be an example, be an example. And I'm sure they got tired of hearing that, but she always stressed with them, you do the right thing, so she'll have a model in front of her that she knows how to follow. Well, I remember when I went to school one time when I was really young, and I was cutting up, and my teacher said, I've taught your sisters and your brothers, and I know what to expect coming out of your household. That meant, I know you know better, straighten up. And that I did.
Right. I think we've all had that coming up from our parents and guardians. Anyone else want to chime in? And that there is a lead-in to question 2, just like there was a lead-in to question 1. And the lead-in for question 2 is, in her discussions with Sandra, Aaron showed compassion for her by describing a similar past. They both had a criminal past. In that past, Aaron said she left her husband because he was unfaithful, not being aware of this aspect of his being. So the second question is, to avoid forming a relationship like the one Aaron had with her unfaithful husband, what do you look for when you consider a close personal relationship with someone?
I think that you look for somebody that has your same beliefs, your values,
Okay.
and your religious. I always look for someone I feel is a Christian too.
Right. Okay. Very good insight. Yes, looking to see if someone share your religious or Christian beliefs, that's definitely important, I would think. So that's good, Miss Betty. Thank you. Anyone else?
I also look to see how they treat other people, especially people that they are not friends with or close with. Like they always say, look at how they treat the waiter, look at how they treat the janitor, not just, people from all walks of life.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Anyone else?
I think just share general interests, right? Just maybe hobbies or, you like the same TV shows, things like that. I think that starts the conversation, and then you can get deeper in conversation when you talk about values, seeing them, how they treat others, those kind of things. But on the initial, which sounds kind of superficial, but I mean, if you really think about it, when you have strike up a conversation with a stranger, you find out what is in common with each other,
Actually, that happened with when Ivan and I first met Alan, and a lot of you guys as well. But it was kind of superficial, I guess, at first, but we soon found some commonalities, and it developed into a good personal relationship, and there were some things that resulted from that relationship. We visiting each other's churches, as Alan mentioned earlier. So that's very important. Anyone else?
Something that one of the pastors at my church shared a while back, and this is maybe more for looking for a partner that you are, interested in marrying, which I think most of us are either on one side or the other of that at this point, but it could also apply to deep relationships like a friendship. But he talked about how a lot of people think about marrying up in terms of finding someone who's wealthier. And he said, what if we applied marrying up in faith? Find someone who is more spiritual than you are, who will strengthen you in that aspect. And I'm still single, so I haven't found that person yet, but it is definitely something to think about, and especially even in just close friendships, right? Like it's something that I think that we're called as Christians not to just interact with other Christians. We should definitely be out there and sharing life with all sorts of people. But I think the people we're really close to, we want to be people who strengthen our faith.
Okay. Good point. Although it might be challenging, especially in this world, to try to find, if you're a single person, for example, to try to find someone that may equal your faith level. Those individuals are kind of hard to come by. But there is a secret, though. You all know what that secret is, by chance?
Yes, wait.
Well, yes, wait. That's true. That's true. But actually, I was thinking of something else, a little bit more spiritual, and that is a spiritual principle, waiting, actually. But what about relying on the Holy Spirit to lead you to the right person? And that's not probably talked about a whole lot when you're trying to make decisions, but you really have to listen to that inner voice that's within all of us. And God speaks to all of us. And he tells us certain things to do. And I'll put some scriptures and some other things on a PowerPoint that I have that will highlight that in just a second. But yeah, I think if we listen to that spirit within, it will tell us a whole lot as to where to go and who to speak to and who to develop a relationship with. Okay, anyone else? And I put as a sub a point here as far as looking for someone to establish a relationship with. Do you look at the physical appearance of a person, personality, honesty? And actually, all of these things are qualities of a believer. As far as looks, certainly you need to look your best because we are representative of God in the earthly realm. We represent God, so it's important to make sure that other people see us in the best light that they can see us in as far as our physical appearance is concerned. And certainly personality, that's important. Jesus had a certain personality when he was in particular situations where he did not yield. For example, I think it was on his way to the crucifixion. They scorned him, and as you all know, had a lot of things happen to him. And they, I believe, I don't know whether it was the Pharisees or not, but they tried to get him to speak, but he did not speak. And so that was his personality. He only did basically what God the Father instructed him to do. And that's what we're to do, is to listen to that spirit within us to let us know what we need to do in certain situations. 2 Corinthians, the 6th chapter and the 14th verse might shed some light on what we're talking about. Do not be unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship has righteousness with lawlessness? And what communion has light with darkness? So that's extremely important to, I believe, listen to that inner voice that we all have to make the right decision. Because we know that sometimes people make the wrong decision in terms of developing relationships with certain people. And so you have to kind of watch who you get close to these days. And so it's extremely important. So, any comments? Okay, let's take Jesus' parable from Matthew, the 25th chapter and the 40th verse. Now, this gives us a different perspective. And this is what it says. And the king will answer and say to them, assuredly, I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these, my brethren, you did it unto me. So I think we have to be careful, even though we want to be selective in who we develop a close relationship with. We also do not want to dismiss anyone if they might not fall into that category where we would develop a close relationship with. In other words, the person may need help financially, socially, or in some other way. They may need, they may be hungry and need food to eat. And so we shouldn't disregard those individuals because of what this scripture is saying. But at the same time, we may not want to develop a closer relationship with those individuals. So you got two sides of the same coin. We want to make sure that we develop a good relationship with people who we're supposed to develop a good relationship with. But and what it means is that we exclude other people who you believe are not good for you. But at the same time, we don't want to make the mistake of not doing something for someone who might not fall into that category. Because as the scripture says here, this is the least of my brethren. So it's kind of a thin line, I guess, from that perspective. Important to recognize a potentially good relationship. This is another scripture you can look at. Hebrews, the 13th chapter and the 2nd verse. Be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unaware. So, again, we don't want to dismiss necessarily anyone because we don't know who God might bring into our lives that will be of benefit to us. And if we dismiss those individuals because of whatever reason, we might actually be hurting ourselves. So we don't want to do that either. So again, you're talking about two sides of the same coin. Any comments on that? No comment? Go ahead.
Well, I hate this much talking. But also, if you look in the book of Proverbs, there's a lot that says there about how to choose your friends and who you hang around with and your acquaintances and all like that. But at the same time, we remember, as you were saying, I'm saying in different words, but I'm saying exactly what you were saying. Everybody has value. And so we can't just dismiss people as nothing and nobody because they may not fit into our category of what we want to consider to be friends. But, yeah, everybody, and we need each other. And my daddy used to say so many times, you don't know who you're going to need before you leave this earth. So don't try to, poke your nose up at one and try to just hang around with another just for, influence, power. But all people are valuable. So, but yeah, Proverbs has a lot to say about relationships, who to be a friend with and who not to be a friend with, Doesn't say they're not valuable, but I really like what, I guess Betty is her name, what she said about watch how they treat other people. Are they always trying to get over? Are they always, are they rude? Or, do they just think less of people just because they feel like they're in a different class or whatever? Again, everybody is valuable. God made everybody, and everybody is valuable. And just because you meet a person doesn't mean they have to be your bosom buddy. You meet a person, you have to decide where you're going to put them. They're not in maybe your inner circle, but they are, a person who is out there who you need to regard and help if you can or if you need to.
Okay, good. Well, I think, as you all know, Jesus had 12 disciples, but only from what I gather from what I hear about the relationship he had with the disciples, there were only 3 that were in his inner circle that you mentioned, Ms. Jones. I forget who they were. What, James, John, and Peter, I believe. I'm not sure if that's correct. But anyway,
James and John, yes.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah,
Peter, James, and John.
He only had a certain few people, even among the disciples, that were closest to him. So you really have to be careful. Okay. Anyone else want to chime in the last 4 or 5 minutes that we have left?
Well, I was just going to say you never know the other person's circumstances. Excuse me.
Their story.
Mm-hmm. I'm a retired nurse, and I like elderly people a lot. And my husband's in a nursing home, and I watch people come to visit nursing homes, and the average stay is 5 minutes. And those people, they need somebody, so you may not be a close friend, but you can always reach out to people to make them feel important, or worthy. You don't have to pour it on thick, but just sometimes saying, how are you? Or, something really simple. But I think in our world today, we tend to isolate, and I think the pandemic did it even more. And I think now that the pandemic's over, people are sort of afraid to step out of their shell, so to speak. They got so ingrained with their families and all that they've lost confidence because the news only tells us about the bad people, all the bad things going on, and we don't hear the good things. And I think, as you say, everybody has something. There's not everybody you want to spend your time with, but you still have something that they can offer.
Right. Well, I tell you what, we have about 3 minutes left, and I'd like to spend the last part of the meeting tonight. Again, some people came in late, so one more time I'd like for everyone to indicate who you are and where you came from or where you're from, beginning with Pamela, because some people didn't hear some of us do that at the very beginning. Pamela?
Hi, I'm Pamela Porter. I live in Southeast Raleigh.
Okay, Sherry?
Hey everyone, I'm Sherry McManus, and I currently live in Willow Spring.
Okay, and of course, Betty and Kristen, we just heard from you. And where are you all from, by the way? You're right here in Garner, right?
Garner.
Yes, we live in Garner.
Okay.
I'm Betty McIntosh. Kristen's my daughter.
Okay, great. And we look to see you again, of course, in future programs. Although I'll mention this later. I want to mention it now before I forget it. We won't have a book club meeting in September, but I'll mention that a little bit later in about a minute or two. Sherry, did you just said your piece, right? Alan.
Yeah, hi, I'm Alan Youngblood, and I'm in Garner.
Okay, great, Alan. This is your second time, and of course, we look forward to you being a regular, of course. And Ms. Jones.
I'm Patricia Jones, and I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina. And actually, August makes 2 years that I've been with the book club.
That's great.
So this is our anniversary.
Great. That's great. That is really great. And of course, Ms. Jones does a very good job as a voiceover person, primarily for the Sandra character. And I've tried to do somewhat of a decent job with one of the female characters. I guess in this case, who was it? I forget. But anyway, in other words, we need...
Today it was Aaron.
It was Aaron.
Today.
It was Aaron. So anyway, Panya.
Hello, Panya Porter from downtown Raleigh.
Good having you, as usual. Okay. Is that it? Oh, yeah, Yvonne. Don't want to forget Yvonne.
I was just typing a message to Miss McIntosh. She's my Lake Benson Park buddy. Hey, how are you? Okay.
Oh, is that right?
I was like, I know her. That's Miss McIntosh, you all. She can walk too. I'm gonna tell you, she can move. I see you, Miss McIntosh. Yvonne from Garner, your Lake Benson Park buddy.
And my wife, of course. Okay. Now, is that everybody? Okay, we're going to spend the next minute just closing out because, and we'll really appreciate all of you being here. We look forward to you being here again in October. I believe it's, I forget the date, but October. That's our next part. We won't be here in September. And so let me just close out by giving you some basic information. And then again, we look forward to seeing all of you. We have some very good stories coming up, by the way. And you don't want to miss a lot of these. And we've gone through that. Final comments. Again, no meeting in September. It's the Labor Day weekend, but we will meet October the 7th. And this will be our 33rd meeting in October. And again, we'll be coming out of the book, The Sequel, chapter 7, pages 132 to 135, if you want to kind of catch up in the reading. Okay, and we've already recognized participants. I'd like to thank all of you for being here. And again, we will see you in October. If not before then, some of you I see in networking meetings and whatnot. So, but we look forward to seeing you again, all of you. So take care. And if you like to listen to a nice song, you can hang on. You can close your window, or at least close your the picture part. And we'll see you next time. All right. Bye-bye.